educate viewers on the underlying reasons behind many of today's grim and troubling events. You know what makes you mad? You know that there are bad things coming just over the horizon. You watch and listen to lots of podcasts and blogs that give their opinions on what's wrong and what's to come. But nobody is talking about what comes next after SHTF and the smoke clears.
Hey, dudes and dudettes, it's me, your Uncle Herbie. Welcome to another week of A Radical Reset, brought to you here locally by Pure 5 Extractions. Thank you, Pure 5 Extractions, for all that you do for the cannabis industry and therefore indirectly for all of us. Thank you, Pure 5 Extractions.
Right on,
Hey, Eric,
Herbie.
what's going on, man?
Hey, it's all good, man. We're doing the remote one more time. How you feeling?
Well, let me explain to the people watching. The reason we're doing a remote is because, as those of you who have watched me regularly know, I had my arm in a sling. Well, that was having my right shoulder replaced. I'm not going to show you the scar. But while they were doing the CAT scan for my right shoulder, they found a tumor in my right lung, which sounds horrible. Well, it is horrible. I had lung cancer, for Christ's sake. But the good news was, by finding it accidentally, we got it when it was very small. But the problem with the very small tumor is that although the top of it was 18 millimeters, it's kind of like a Portuguese man of war. You know what I mean, Eric? It's you see the
Yeah,
top of it, but there's all these little tendrils. You don't know where they are until the surgeon goes in. So in
right.
the Mayo Clinic, which I was thrilled, they did an awesome job. They used a robot and they went in through my side and they took out the tumor, but all the little tendrils were all around the lower lobe of my right lung, which is now gone. So your lung has three lobes, and your right lung, your left lung has two lobes, your right lung has three lobes. The bottom lobe of my right lung is gone. I had what's called a robotic lobectomy, and it was successful.
Lobectomy. A lobectomy?
Lobectomy.
Okay.
Mhm. There are four holes in my side. I'm not going to show you or the audience, but and now they're sewed up. They're not. But it's not a big. It's not a big cut. It's four holes down the side, and where the fingers, let's call it, of the robot went in and did all the snipping and cutting. The surgeon sits beside the table and does this all on the screen. It's very cool, but it's much more accurate because robots don't shake. You know what I mean? They're
Hmm.
every time it does it the right way. So obviously I feel fine and I'm talking fine. I might cough a little while we're talking because my lung capacity is just starting to get back to where it's reasonable. I really can't walk much more than, I don't know, maybe about a quarter of a mile before I start huffing and puffing. But I'm every day I'm going out, I'm walking more and more, I'm getting more and more wind up. But that's why we're doing it remote today because I'm not exactly batting a thousand. I don't know. That was a fractured metaphor. But I feel very, very good. I feel very, very lucky. I won't need radiation. I won't need chemotherapy. See, I'm
That's
already
great.
out of breath.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have to do these
This is
breathing exercises, right?
Oh yeah, I have my weirdo little breathing machine that I have to suck up, and it helps my capacity. And anyway, the good news is when I'm fully recovered, which will be a couple of 3 weeks from now, according to what the doctor told me, and it seems to be true, I won't know that it won't feel any different than it's ever felt. When I first came home, I couldn't take a deep breath, and I won't go into details, but I was catheterized. I spent a night in the hospital. By the way, the greatest hospital ever. I wake up from anesthesia, and there's a flat screen in the hospital room. It says "Welcome, Herbie." Then it has a picture of all the nurses and doctors that are going to be attending me, and they had 24-hour room service. It was really, let me tell you, folks. There are three Mayo clinics in the country. The original one in Rochester, Minnesota. This one here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona, and there's one in Florida. I don't know exactly where it is in Florida. I want to say it's northern Florida somewhere, but I could be wrong. But if you really get sick, travel to the Mayo Clinic. Like the one here, they even have a hotel right there on the grounds. So many people I met when I was in the hospital were from Canada and Montana and all over the place that come because it's the greatest care in the world. And I cannot tell you how appreciative I am. If you got to have cancer, God forbid, go to the Mayo Clinic. Don't
Mm.
don't screw around. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah. Well, we're glad you're getting better. That's for sure.
I'm 100%. My life expectancy. What's going to happen? Just the last little detail. Over the next 2 years, I'll be getting a CAT scan every 6 months. just to make sure that it doesn't come back. There's a slightly better than 50-50 chance that it will. If it comes back, we'll remove it very small at that time. And these tumors are so slow growing that at some point, if it came back, let's say 10 years from now, we wouldn't even bother with it because I'll die of old age before it'll kill me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like some men get, all men get prostate cancer. 100% of men over 65, sooner or later, will get a prostate tumor. But most of us just die with it because there's no point operating on it. It's so slow that you'll die of old age first. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am. I don't know if that's a
So
good thing, but you know.
so let's go over the agenda. We're gonna stick to like three groups: our local stuff, national, and international. So on the local front, we're gonna talk about North Carolina. People are still out of power. We got to give everyone an update on that. Then national, we're going to talk about the Trump candidate and what's coming. And then internationally, we're going to talk about Ukraine and that Biden escalation, the crypto movement, and Germany's power grid. They're in big trouble.
Big trouble. Anyway, so let's
No-
start at the beginning.
North
So
Carolina.
North Carolina, poor North Carolina. FEMA fucked that one up as usual. It was predictable.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say other than how does an agency who's only dedicated to do one thing? FEMA stands for Federal Emergency Management. I don't know what the A stands for, but it's Federal Emergency Management. I don't know, Association. I don't know what the hell it is. But that's what FEMA is. How can they
It's an agency,
screw it up so
management
bad?
agency.
Agency, thank you. Well, see, that's cancer did this to my brain. No, I don't have brain cancer. But anyway, long story short, in the end, I hope President Trump this should be one of the agencies that gets killed and completely reorganized as a group of private, you take the chairman of Walmart, the chairman of Target, the chairman of Lowe's, the chairman of Home Depot, and you let them plan emergency response. Then when this is the Herbie idea. Then when the shit hits the fan in any part of the country, then these natural disasters, by the way, have nothing to do with climate change.
Zero. Nada.
Zero. In fact, the incidents, although they've been predicting for 20 years that hurricanes are going to get worse, they're actually less. It's just that we happen to live, our southeast United States is ground central for hurricanes. That's it. And I grew up in Miami Beach. I was born in Miami Beach, and I've been through a lot of hurricanes. And this is just where they come. In the Atlantic Ocean, they're called hurricanes. In the Pacific Ocean, they're called typhoons. They're exactly the same thing. It's whether you find it in the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean. The number of them and the intensity has not gone up. This was just another hurricane, and that FEMA fucked up. If you let private business do it, Elon Musk had a super idea. Did you hear the Elon Musk idea?
What was that?
So he has this company that builds prefab houses, and he has Tesla that does self-driving, cars and everything like that. He wants to use the technology to build self-driving mobile homes, basically shells. And then when there's an emergency, they are programmed to automatically travel to the emergency area and park themselves in Walmart and Target parking lots. And then people have an automatic place to stay. All of these are there for emergency housing. And then Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's and Target and companies like them who, let them organize, will then do the restoration. And at the end, send the government a bill. No one expects them to do it for free, but they'll do it for a fraction of the cost of what the government does because they're for-profit companies that are very, very, very efficient, and they know exactly how to deliver goods and services. That's what's going to come out of FEMA. By the way, I think Trump's buying into that. So Donald Trump is surprising me, to be perfectly honest, in a good way. I'm surprised. He really has filled his cabinet immediately. I've never seen anyone do it that fast. Have you, Eric?
No, I haven't.
So
what do you think is coming out of that balance of the cabinet?
Well, I see a very disruptive cabinet. The people that are saying bad things. If you're a bureaucrat and you live, let's say, in Northern Virginia right now, and you work for an agency, you're absolutely shitting blood.
Yeah.
Because Doge is the key to this whole. The thing that has me excited, that has millions of people excited, maybe you too that are watching and listening, is Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency that is being headed by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy,
for
and has
free.
lots of people joining it. That's the most amazing thing of all. And they're going to have enormous amounts of executive power. Now, one of the things that was chess instead of checkers was a lawsuit that was brought by Sean Spicer. Do you remember who Sean Spicer is, Eric?
He was the former
Press secretary.
press. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he was Trump's original press secretary back in the first term before Sarah Huckabee Sanders took over, and he's always been a part of Trump world. So when Biden took office, and I'm not changing the subject, I promise. I'm not going off into some wild speculation. But when he took office, um, pardon me. So when Biden took office, Spicer was sitting on a board that Trump had appointed him to oversee something. It was something that it's not important what it was, but his term was not supposed to run out until November, okay, of the following year after the election, and Biden fired him. Now, constitutionally, the theory was at least that Biden couldn't fire him, so Spicer sued Biden administration for removing him before his term was over, and he did that not to stay on the board, because by the time they ruled on the lawsuit, it was already time past the time he would have left the board anyway.
Right.
But he did it because he knew what was, or at least he speculated what would happen, and it turned out to be true. So the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, took the case and beat Spicer in the Court of Appeals. They ruled that the president indeed has the power to fire political appointees and non-political appointees within the state. That's called Spicer v. Biden. Spicer lost, but by doing that, the precedent was set that the president can now use executive power to fire anybody he wants. So under that precedent, when Trump comes in, he's going to use that precedent and fire people like a motherfucker. I mean, it's going to be
The Grim
great.
Reaper, huh?
Well, here's the deal. Now, it gets a little complicated, but simply, number one thing on Trump's agenda, besides the number one thing, is to pass the new tax bill to make the Trump tax cuts that are already in place permanent. But they're going to do that almost a week after they take office. They're ready to go on that one. But the second part, and the part that's going to get exciting, is as Doge is going to select or suggest a whole bunch of regulatory cuts. Okay, basically, so like I'll use the obvious easy target. They're going to go after the Department of Education.
Yeah, let's hone in on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to home in on it because it's a perfect example of what the whole government's going to go through. But the first one that's going to go down is going to be the Department of Education, because we spend more money per pupil than any other country in the world, and our performance is like third from the bottom. We're barely above Afghanistan. Our education system our public education system is awful, just plain awful. You may live in an area where there's a good one, but across the board, it would be hard to argue that public education is anything but basically an indoctrination center for the left. But anyway, long story short, they're going to go in, and Linda McMahon is going to be the new Secretary of Education. For those of you not familiar with Linda McMahon, she was the chairman of the WWE, wasn't it right? Am I right about that? The WWE?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but she's a well-known executive. She's very well thought of, and her job is going to be to destroy the Department of Education. And they're going to start cutting regulations. Well, as these regulations are cut, every bureaucrat that's been enforcing that regulation is going to lose their job. And that's what has the states so panicked. Because if Trump removes a regulation, let's say that a school district has to have a certain number of this, like DEI, then if that regulation is gone, then all the DEI officers in the Department of Education are simply going to be let go. They're gone. And the federal Department of Education doesn't really educate anybody. Now, what they're saying is they're not going to do away with revenue sharing to the local school districts. They're simply going to move that into lesser federal departments. It's not going to be a big department anymore. It'll just send some federal money to, states like poor states like Alabama, Mississippi, where they need some federal aid to help with their local schools. That money is still going to go there, but without all the rules attached to it, so that the people who are in those states the local school board, just like it was when I grew up. If you're my age or Eric's age, you're a little younger than me, but schools were run always by the local school board, who today are basically mouthpieces for the Department of Education. They're going to be in charge again, and they're going to be able to use that federal money without anyone telling them how they have to use it.
Right.
And that's what has the teachers union freaked the fuck out, because the Department of Education was created in 1979. It's one of those Orwellian things to supposedly improve education, but in fact, what it became is a single place where the unions could lobby and get lots of money for doing nothing. A good example was during COVID. Okay, the Department of Education got involved with Dr. Fauci, and the teachers stayed out of work, and they were fighting opening up the schools longer than anybody else, the teachers, and that shouldn't be. That's the other thing. The teachers union's vomiting blood over this, which makes me so happy. There should be no such thing as a teachers union, guys. I hate to tell you this, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't be able to strike our children. What do you think?
So let's lock up the Doge.
Let's lock up the Doge. The Doge is going to do a mess. They claim they're going to save $2 trillion. Now,
I thought it was a 3. It's 2?
It's 2, 3. It doesn't really matter. And you know how much a trillion is? Do you know how much a trillion is? People don't realize how much a trillion is. Okay, if a trillion is a
26
million
footballs, right? 26 football fields or something like that.
It's a million. Okay, so in other words, 1 million seconds, 1 million seconds is about, it's a couple of years if you figure it out. Okay, a trillion seconds is like a millennia, and we've now hit the 36 trillion mark of debt. Now, we're not going to pay down that debt, but we're not going to pay off the debt. It's just not going to happen. But it's not important that we pay it off. It's important that we have a trajectory where we stop its growth. That's what they're trying to do. Because remember, we're dealing with a fiat currency. The dollar is just paper, and there's nothing behind it. It's all based on the confidence of the people. So if we don't stop the trajectory of debt, ultimately people will lose confidence and we'll go into a hyperinflation, like has historically always happened when debt gets this high. So all they're trying to do is change, instead of it being a straight line up. If you were to look at a chart, it would be, the debt cooked along, and then Barack Obama became president. It would just kind of cook. It looks almost like a flat line if you look at a chart since the founding. And then suddenly in 2008, it starts going like this, and then now it's going like that. Okay, it's just it's out of sight. So what they're going to try to do is change the trajectory to go down like that. And in order to do that, you have to cut a lot of money out. Not just cut the growth, you have to actually cut out the budget.
Spending.
And the only way to do that is to get rid of personnel and departments that aren't doing anything. But anybody who's ever worked for the government knows most of the people who work for the government don't actually do anything. They just move paper around and go to meetings. That makes them feel productive, and then they issue regulations, and then that's where the Chevron ruling comes in. I hope I'm not confusing anybody, but if you all remember the Chevron ruling, where the regulators no longer have the power of law. Prior to Chevron, if an unelected bureaucrat issued a regulation, the courts considered it a law. Now they don't. That frees up Doge to go in and say, this is bullshit, this is bullshit, this is bullshit, this is bullshit, and fire everybody under Spicer v. Biden, and be allowed to do it under the Chevron ruling, okay, to revoke the regulations. Now, the reason the stock market has gone apeshit and Bitcoin is at 100,000, which, by the way,
reserve that for later on.
Okay, I'm going to reserve that. But the reason all this is happening, is because the smart money understands that Doge is for real. It's for real. And people are really excited about it. And Musk is deadly serious. And Vivek Ramaswamy is not a dummy by any stretch of the imagination. And these guys, together with lots of other, there are so many names that I could add that wouldn't mean anything to anybody because they're tech billionaires and things, but they're on board, man. They are on board, and they want that. Everybody wants to cut the crap out of the government, and that's why they're freaking out. But if Trump really does this, Trump will be the most important president of the United States since Lincoln. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If Trump really does this, he will go down in history as the most consequential president, maybe of all, maybe even more than Lincoln.
So
Because
he,
he go ahead.
so he has the Congress, he has the Senate, and he has the Oval Office,
The House.
The House.
Yes, he has
right?
all three. Mhm.
All three. So, what could, in your mind, stop his legislation?
If the Democrats try to filibuster every bill in the Senate, then the Republicans will be faced with a very hard choice. It'll be interesting how they deal with it. So the filibuster says you have to have 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. Now, the way the filibuster works now is a senator can, in the old days, the name filibuster, by the way, comes from a guy named Senator Filibuster, believe it or not. It's just it's like we all call ketchup Heinz ketchup. You know, there really was an HK Heinz, right? I mean, there really was Mr. You know, a lot of things that we have names for are really just names of people. Like, anyway, it's not important. But you get my drift. So the bottom line is here. Where's I going with this? I just lost my train of thought, Eric.
How the
I don't hear you. Talk to me, baby. Where was I going with this? I swear to
don't
God,
know.
I'm like Pepsi. I don't hear you. Why don't I hear you, baby?
I don't know.
Eric, are you muted? There you
No,
go.
I'm not.
Now I hear you. Where was I going before I went off into HK Heinz? Oh, Senator Filibuster. What
Yeah,
could stop it?
filibuster.
Okay, there it goes. Comes back. It's old age and surgery. You know, I'm going to blame it on my surgery, and I'm on a few drugs. No, actually, I'm not taking any narcotics. Actually, I'm just
Good.
taking ibuprofen and Lyrica for nerve pain. But anyway, where was I going? So to overcome a filibuster, you need 60 votes, and the Republicans have 53 votes, so they can't overcome a filibuster. So theoretically, the Democrats could try to stop every single piece of legislation that way. Now, in the modern filibuster, it used to be when you had a filibuster, you had to literally go down to the Senate, stand there on the floor, and speak and stay up. As long as you could stand there speaking, that's how long the filibuster would last. And you would try to outlast the guy. Now, since the Republicans control the Senate, all they have to do is not get rid of the filibuster, but change the rule. Now, today you can do a filibuster and you don't have to be there. It's just I'm filibustering and that's it. Well, what the Republicans could do, you don't want to end the filibuster because one day they'll be in the minority, and you don't, and that's a huge. You want the minority theoretically to be able to stop a majority. Otherwise, it's mob rule. You see what I'm saying? I mean, sometimes the masses are asses. The filibuster is a very important constitutional tool that should be there. I don't oppose it, but they could require that if you do the filibuster, we have to go back to the old-fashioned way, and that's what they'll do. I predict what's going to happen is the Democrats are going to immediately try to filibuster the first big reform bill that Trump puts up. I don't know what his first one will be, but let's say he puts up a bill to like basically destroy the Green New Deal and to stop all spending on it. A lot of the money that Biden appropriated, all those trillions, haven't been spent yet, and Trump doesn't want to spend it because it's too much money chasing too few goods is what creates inflation. So the first thing that Trump's going to want to do is stop the spending on all that bullshit, especially that Green New Deal bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the money on the chargers that will never exist, the money for wind and solar, all of that needs to be killed. Trump's been very clear. But if he goes to do that, he'll have to do it by passing a bill in Congress because all of those things were created under the Orwellian named Inflation Reduction Act, which was the Inflation Causation Act, actually. And it'll require an act of Congress to rescind it because it's a law. Well, the Democrats will try to filibuster that, but what then the new Senate Majority Leader, Senator Thune, who's a very, very competent man, by the way, very competent man. I think he was a better choice than Rick Scott of Florida, personally, because Rick Scott of Florida is kind of like Matt Gaetz. Nobody likes him. And when you want to have a leader of a party, you want somebody that can make everybody do the same thing. Anyway, make a long story short, they're going to require that if you do it, you got to stand there on the Senate floor and give that speech. And sometimes they go on for days. They have to like bring on porta potties. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Okay. What's going to happen is they're not going to get rid of the filibuster. They're just going to say, if you do it, go ahead, but you got to stand there and speak. And that'll in the beginning they'll do it, but it won't go on for long. And because the vice president, who's not essentially constitutionally the vice president, is the president of the Senate, and therefore can choose who's going to speak next. Well, when you have if it was the Democrat-controlled Senate, and this requirement was there to speak, what he would do is allow them to pass off to the next guy. I'm going to yield my time to Senator Jones, and then they take over and talk forever. But with a Republican vice president, he doesn't have to allow that. He'll say, well, no, the next speaker is going to be a Republican, and the filibuster's over. So that was a long explanation of what's going to happen. In the end, Trump will get most of what he wants, and the Democrats are going to shriek.
Right.
But that's the way it goes. Baby.
All right. So we got to come up on a break, pay some bills, come up on a break, and we come back. We're going to talk about the international side of things. Sound good?
Great. Sounds good. Let's do it.
Isn't working again. I'm roasting in here.
Hi there. I'm from Canaloo Air. I'm here to fix your air conditioner.
Canaloo Air is a family-owned HVAC company that specializes in residential air conditioning and heating. We offer a variety of services, including installation, replacement, repair, and maintenance. Canaloo Air. We keep your home comfortable all year round. Call us today for a free quote. Why Canaloo Air? Here are the top 5 reasons. Family-owned and operated. We are committed to high-quality service. Our technicians use the highest quality parts and equipment. The business is a member of the Home Advisor Elite Service Award program. And finally, we have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Visit our website, canilooair.com, or call us today, 602-609-3480, to schedule an appointment.
The next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
Get the right RV at the right price right now. This new Winnebago Solis Pocket is newly discounted to just $476 per month. La Mesa and Rec Van, the world's largest motorhome dealer. Visit LaMesaRV.com today.
This is the all-electric Nissan Ariya. With dual-motor e-Force all-wheel drive that helps put you in control, the Nissan Ariya is electric with an edge.
We're back.
You know, just as a side note, I was watching all the ads myself. Aside from Pure 5, who I love, and all these other things, if you guys are in the market for an RV, now is the time. The RV business it's a bloodbath. It's the prices that they have units on their lots that are from not only from just this year, but last year and the year before. The boom, what happened was they had a big boom in the RV business during the COVID lockdown, because it was really one of the ways you could get out of your house legally without a mask and go live go out to the woods. Well, all of these big companies overbuilt, and now they put millions of units onto the lots of the dealers that are just laying there. And so if you're in the market for an RV, from low to high end, from trailer to $1 million, bus, Class A, boy, now is the time to do it. The price they were showing on that Solis in that ad, that's a 50% discount. And the markup on an RV is 50%, by the way, guys. So if you go to a RV dealership, they have a lot of room to play, a lot. And when they have nobody playing, so you go in there and you look at let's say a nice travel trailer and it's marked for $70,000, you're going to be able to buy it for 35, and they'll be thrilled to give it to you because they want to get it off their lot. Important safety tip: even when you buy a new RV, hire an independent inspector to inspect it before you sign the bottom line, because when they sit in the lot a long time, just like a car, they develop problems. Okay, and you want that to be fixed before you take the order. I'm oversharing, guys, but just that's enough. Okay, let's go on. What's the next thing on our agenda, Eric?
We got Ukraine and Mr. Biden.
Okay, let's talk about Ukraine and Mr. Biden. I've got to be honest. I thought I had problems because I had lung cancer until I heard Biden decided to allow U.S. missiles, U.S. long-range missiles, to be fired into Russia. And goddamn if the Ukrainians didn't actually do it. That is an enormous escalation. The Russians have been crystal clear from the beginning that any weapon that's used on Russian soil, they will consider that a direct intervention by the country who manufactures the weapon and supplies it to Ukraine. So we are now in a state of war with Russia. Okay, we don't acknowledge it because President's senility there is not explaining why he did it. And why he did it was simply to enmesh us so deeply in Ukraine that Trump can't take us out. This is the military-industrial complex as represented by President senility, who is trying to suck us into this conflict to a place where we can't get out. That's the bad news. And if Trump weren't going to come into office, if Harris had been the president-elect, I would be telling you to get out of the cities right now. That's what I would be telling you. We are in greater danger of a nuclear war, okay, than at any time in all of our lifetimes. I don't care how old you are. This is it.
And this is not
the missile crisis.
And this is not hyperbole.
This is not hyperbole.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason you're not hearing a lot of it, you're not hearing this from the mainstream media, and it's because they're the mainstream media. They feed the industrial complex. The whole theory behind Biden is they haven't done, as Putin has set lines, and we've crossed the lines. The first line we crossed is we said that there would be no NATO membership added to NATO after the fall of the Soviet Union. Well, that's bullshit. We added Sweden and Finland and Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary. We crossed that line. Okay. So then we thought, well, let's keep pushing it. We'll make Ukraine up. They started talking about Ukraine becoming a part of NATO. That's when Putin's head exploded, and that's what caused the invasion of the Ukraine. Okay, that's when Trump says that if he had been president and had been elected in 2020, as he should have been, I'm not going to go down that road, but as he should have been, okay, this would have never happened because we would have withdrawn our support from Ukraine. This is, like I've said many times, this is not our fight. We have no U.S. interest there. And Ukraine, for the last 5 centuries, has been a part of Russia. Okay, this is just, and I don't want to get into the complications of it, but believe me, this is ridiculous. We caused the invasion. Now, what Biden's doing is he's crossed the big dark red line of giving Ukraine weapons that can reach Moscow. Moscow is only 300 miles or so from the front lines of where the war is going on now, and that's not very far. That would be like I live in Phoenix and I want to drive to San Diego to visit my son. It's about 300 miles. Okay, this is too close. I can drive there in a few hours, right? 6 hours, I'm in San Diego. So having said that, Trump, God bless him, I know is on the phone to Putin right now saying, be cool, Vlad, be cool. I'm going to be there in 6 weeks. Be cool. And thank God, everyone, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whether you think Trump's going to do a good job on anything else. The one thing that you can't deny is during his 4 years, we didn't start or get involved in any new wars. Okay, right. He believes in peace through strength, a very, very strong military that you don't have to use because it's so strong. No one attacks a strong guy, but you don't go picking fights either. You don't become a bully. You don't walk in and say, this is what we're going to do, fuck you. Okay, which is what we're doing in Ukraine. So what Trump's going to do is pull us back. And Zelensky knows this, and they're all going to have to sit down at the table. Now, what he's not going to do is pull out like Afghanistan. He's not going to take office and say, okay, it's all over. He's going to take office and immediately call up Putin and Zelensky and said there'll be a big summit. They'll hold it somewhere, probably in Finland, like in Helsinki or someplace like that. They'll all sit around the table and they'll hammer out a deal, which will look exactly like the deal they could have had at the start of this fucking war, where the Russians take Luhansk which, by the way, is 95% Russian to begin with, and is real. You might as well. I mean, the people there want to be a part of Russia. It's you're not asking they're not being suppressed. Same thing with the Crimea. Okay, and Russia's going to get that too. And this is all going to be over. But until then, for the next 6 weeks, you got to pray to God that Putin keeps believing in Trump. Personally, I think that they like each other, and thank God for that.
Mhm.
Okay. And by the way, those people who think that if we somehow got rid of Putin, we get something better, have no understanding of Russians at all. Okay.
Right.
Putin
Right.
is about as good as we can get. He is sane and rational. What's stopping the war right now is that Putin is sane and rational. Okay. So thank God for that, because we had an irrational Russian leader, we'd be at nuclear war right now.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's what I have to say about that. What do you think, Eric?
Uh, I like what you said. People just don't underestimate Russians. Period. They assume that they want what we have, and it's not true.
It's not true. All Russia, if you look at a map of Russia, it's the largest country in the world, right? You look at a globe,
Correct.
it crosses 9 time zones. It's the biggest country in the world. Now, when you defend a country that big, let's say that you're the ruler of that country historically, whether it's now or it's 500 years ago, it's not like the United States. They don't have 2 oceans and 2 friendly neighbors, right? They have
Mhm.
hostile neighbors all around them. They've been fighting the Chinese and the Poles, and there's a long history of Russia being invaded. The French have invaded Russia. The Germans invaded Russia. How the Russians defend Russia is by putting a big bumper, a big boundary, so that it's hard to get into Russia. And the more land you have, the better off you are. That's what the
Right.
Ukraine is. It's a giant defensive buffer. And if we added them to NATO, we'd be putting an enemy from the Russian point of view right up their asses. And they're not going to tolerate that. Just not going to
Mm-mm.
happen. And thank God that Trump understands that. And frankly, I wish Ukraine was still part of Russia. I think this whole thing is ridiculous. But anyway, that's
All
where
right.
we are.
We got to move on. Let's talk about crypto.
Oh, let's talk about crypto. So, President Trump, God bless him, first of all, Gary Gensler, who's a name I have never brought up to you, Eric, but he's the current chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and he's been very anti-crypto during this entire administration. That's the bad news. The good news is he's made a whole bunch of regulations on crypto that have been knocked down by the courts, every single one of them. In fact, as recently as yesterday, he lost his last round of trying to regulate or over-regulate the crypto industry. The whole idea behind crypto is the government can't get at it. And we can't allow the government to pass a law that says they have to get at it, because all that'll do is create a black market. It'll turn into a giant clusterfuck. Okay,
Can you give the basic of how the crypto works?
Sure. Crypto works in what's called a blockchain. Okay, and the blockchain has no central point. So what makes crypto safe and safe from intrusion is there's no place that a government can go to seize the crypto assets. The crypto assets, once they're in the blockchain, you can physically remove them from the blockchain on, let's say, a thumb drive, stick it in a safe, and nobody can get at it ever for any reason. Now, from the point of view of regulators, they hate that, because since there's no place to go, like the internet runs off of servers, and for example, a country can turn off the internet in a country. China can turn off the Chinese internet. Argentina, Argentina's a bad example. Brazil is a good example of a country that does it, interferes and turns off parts of the internet. You can't do that with the blockchain. It can't be done. That's the genius of it. And the hardest money that's ever been created is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is an actual currency. Now, don't confuse Bitcoin with other what they call cryptocurrencies. A lot of them are specifically designed vehicles to deliver specific assets and results. For example, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. The second biggest
Ethereum.
Thank you. I own Ethereum, by the way, and I can't even think of the name of it. I am so senile. Anyway, Ethereum, which is really Ether. Ethereum is the blockchain that's specific to Ether. Okay, and that is what right now they're trying to figure out a way to use the Ethereum net to do things like credit card transactions without a middleman. which, by the way, freaks out the banks because they make so much money on credit cards. So if there was a credit card that you could do business with without having to deal with the bank at all, it's just a transaction between you and the merchant, and they could.
Yeah.
You can see how you could move a lot of money, right?
Right.
And you could also see how organized crime could move a lot of money. And that's always the excuse they use. Criminals can use the blockchain to hide ill-gotten assets, and that is absolutely true. Okay.
Right.
However, you can do that with dollars. The amount of money that organized crime moves in crypto is a tiny fraction of how much they hide in dollars. Take it from me, a convicted criminal, frankly, who knows how to launder money. It's not that tough to launder dollars. It really isn't. Now, the blockchain makes it even easier. There's no doubt about it. Okay, now, but like anything in life, it's all how you use it. Bitcoin is just a currency, and millions and billions of people are using it to good. I'll give you a great example. El Salvador. Okay, El Salvador, until the current president took office about 5 years ago, his name is Nayib Bukele. He's the most, except for Javier Milei in Argentina, the most pro-Bitcoin president of any country in the world. And what he did is he took a whole bunch of his country's reserves and he bought a shit ton of Bitcoin at $30,000. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to say he bought about $300 million worth of Bitcoin when Bitcoin was trading at about $30,000. I'm rounding the numbers. It's more like 292, but just go with me. I'm trying to keep it simple to understand. Now, what Bukele did, this is a country, is he took his country's dollar reserves, he converted them to Bitcoin reserves, and then he took it off the blockchain, literally, and it's locked in a safe in El Salvador. And it's now worth over 3 times what he paid for it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes Bitcoin different than any other cryptocurrency is the algorithm that makes Bitcoin work cannot be changed. It's bulletproof. Nobody can change how Bitcoin works, and nobody can flood the market with Bitcoin. There are only a total of 21 million Bitcoins out there, and about half of them have been mined. But there's ultimately, in about the year 2110, 2120, right around there, the world, all the Bitcoin will have been mined. All 21 million Bitcoins will be in circulation. And that's it. That's all the Bitcoins there will ever be. And that's what makes it the hardest money in the world. So gold, which has always been the traditional place where people, and gold's going crazy. It's at an all-time high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always told people buy gold. I'll still tell you buy gold. It's great. And gold is the second hardest asset, but you can still mine more gold. And if you look at the universe, as we go out in the universe with SpaceX and we're sending probes onto asteroids, it will not be long before we're mining asteroids. That's what's going on. When you see them, like they landed a lander on Bennu, there's this big asteroid called Bennu, and they put a lander and they got a piece of it, and they took it out, and then they brought it back to Earth. It's a remarkable scientific achievement. What they're proving is that we can mine these asteroids. Well, gold is a very common element. It's on the periodic table, right? And it's all over the universe. Some of these asteroids are out there are big solid hunks of gold. And that means that as we bring that back, it affects the value of gold as you increase the supply. Bitcoin can't be increased. That's it. So there's only 21 million of them. There will never be more than 21 million of them. So Bitcoin becomes more and more valuable. It's $100,000 today. When you're listening to this, it might be 98, it might be 103, but you get what I'm saying. We're at $100,000, and this is just the beginning, guys. It's going to go to $1 million. It might go to $10 million. Okay. Personally, Eric and I were talking before we started to do the show today. When Bitcoin first came out, you could buy it for a penny. Think about this. It was 1 cent when it came out, and I remember when it came out. I feel so stupid. It took me a while to learn, and I want to slap myself for it. $10 would have bought you 1,000 Bitcoins at a penny apiece. If you owned 1,000 Bitcoin today, you'd be worth $100 million on a $10 investment. And there really are guys that did it. There are guys now, Bitcoin billionaires, and there's a bunch of them. that really went out and they just bought a couple of $1,000s of Bitcoin, and today they're billionaires because of it. Okay, it's not too late for you. Okay, don't get the idea that, oh God, I missed it. No, it's 100,000 will seem like nothing. And Bitcoin, President Trump, now bringing it back to the US, is very pro Bitcoin. He wants to do what Bukele did in El Salvador and buy a shit ton of Bitcoin as a reserve, because he understands that eventually we need to make the dollar an asset-backed currency. And Bitcoin is a great asset along with gold and silver to do that. Have I lost everybody on this, Eric? Did I?
No, you're real clear on that. Let's tie in the mess in Germany wrap up.
Okay. So that's what's going on there. So let's go to Germany. Germany, along with China, is currently Germany. It'll be a race to see who deindustrializes first. Germany might be the first country in the world to fully industrialize and then deindustrialize, or it might be China. But here's why it's happening. Germany is deindustrializing because it bought into this green bullshit. History will mark the global warming fiasco. I almost called it a conspiracy, but it is kind of a conspiracy. Under the auspices of global warming and climate change, countries have done incredibly stupid things, and Germany is at the top of the unbelievably stupid list. So under their premier Angela Merkel, who's no longer in power, now it's Olaf Scholz, who, by the way, his government just collapsed. They're going to go into a special election here any minute. Mm-hmm. And what the Europeans are calling the far right, that's Trumpians. Trumpian politicians are in Europe. Okay, that's what they're calling the far right. Like, for example, Marine Le Pen in France, they call her a far right, but she's really just right of center, because the center in Europe moves so far left that if you're just in the normal center, you look like a far rightist. That's what Trump is, really. If you look at Trump, his policies are very, very reasonable, right? Cut the budget, cut taxes, let the economy grow.
And let the states do their thing.
Let the states do their thing. But when you take the whole country so far left, then the center starts to look like the far right, right? And then if the press is in the bag like they are here, and they are in Europe too, then reasonable people start they try to paint them as extremists. So, for example, the president of Italy, not the president, the premier of Italy, prime minister, is a woman named Giorgia Meloni. Now, she's another Trump. They get along great. She hated Biden, by the way. She's thrilled. And Italy is going through an economic renaissance because she's doing all the things that Trump's going to do here. I'm digressing away from Germany. Now we go back up to Germany. Germany didn't get Giorgia Meloni yet. They ended up with the same old shit, right? So, and what Olaf Scholz is that's going down the drain right now he's the last of the old-fashioned politicians who are just too dumb to get it. So what's going to take over is what they call the right. But anyway, right now what's happening in Germany is the Nord Stream pipeline got blown up during the Ukrainian war, probably by us. No one's going to ever admit it, but who else could have done it? Right. I mean, who else has the diving capability? And anyway, whoever blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, Germany did something incredibly stupid. They had a whole bunch of nuclear reactors that were doing just fine, providing the country all kinds of energy, and they shut them all down and replaced them with windmills and solar panels in Germany. Somehow, nobody in the political world seemed to think or understand that in Germany, the wind doesn't blow much and the sun doesn't shine much. Okay? You can put wind farms, for example, in the American Midwest, because what people don't, you know that the only place in the world where tornadoes really happen is the American Midwest. And the reason for that is from the North Pole all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, there are no mountains. It's flat. It's a straight line for air to flow down from the North Pole through the American Midwest and cause all kinds of climate havoc. You know, the reason you don't have tornadoes in Europe are the Alps, right? They knock them all down. That's why we don't get tornadoes in Phoenix. We're surrounded by mountains. But when you have a big, flat, open area and there's no mountains from the North Pole all the way down to you're going to get tornadoes and all kinds of stuff. Well, that's why wind power works here. So if you put up a bunch of wind farms in let's say, Texas, like they have, you will get a lot of wind, okay? In Germany, there's not enough wind. I don't know how. So they're in desperate situations. And when they cut off the natural gas pipeline, German industry doesn't have enough electricity to run the factories. And so they're having to shut down factories because they simply can't, they don't have enough reliable power. And by the way, when you hear people say that EVs are the future, bullshit. There's no electric grid to support that. Okay, we can't convert to that because even our electric grid doesn't have enough power to power what we have now. Okay, because of all this stupid green shit that we've done. We've done a lot of the same things. We're just lucky. We're lucky because we have domestic oil supply and because wind and solar can work here a lot because we have a huge desert and Midwest, but it's very inefficient and it's not always there on demand. And anyway, Trump's going to change all that. But Germany doesn't have our luck. Okay, they're going to have to basically hit the restart button. And what's happening is they're deindustrializing. Factories are shutting down permanently. Wages are going down. Unemployment is going up. And on top of everything else, they have a huge welfare state. You know, when you have national health care, for example, somebody's got to pay for it. And I'll make an easy prediction for you, and then I'll end this discussion. What this means is, within the next decade, okay, by 2030, 31, 32, 33, there will be no more European Union. It's going to break up. And the euro, which originally was the Deutschmark to begin with, will go back to being the Deutschmark. Okay? And then the franc will come back and the lira will come back and it'll be Europe like it always was. But the whole idea of centralized power is failing. Now, that's a good thing for humanity because the worst thing you can do is centralize power, right? Because people, when they have power, only want more power. That's the nature of it. When you get a little bit, you want a little more. And you justify it with all these pretty reasons. Like, that's why climate change is popular with politicians. It's a great excuse to build the size of the bureaucracy. Okay? President Trump and people like him, Giorgia Meloni, Viktor Orban in Hungary, President Musk in Poland, no relation to Elon, by the way, just the same last name. There are a number of them that are coming on. When you hear, by the way, you're going to hear a lot about the far right in Europe in the next year or two that are going to take power. That's not the far right. That's the center reasserting itself when the center moved itself off into the far left. Do you understand what I'm saying? Don't worry, the Nazis aren't coming. And by the way, can I briefly discuss Nazism for a minute? Because it gets thrown around to goddamn much. Left. Okay, 1 minute. Okay. Nazism and fascism are two different things. Okay? The word fascist and Nazi gets thrown around a lot. Understand this. Mussolini was a fascist. Okay? General Franco was a fascist. A fascist means that the state, all the power is controlled in the hands of a dictator at the state, and private industry becomes nothing more than an extension of the state. And it's allowed to maintain the illusion of being private, but in fact, it's carrying out the wishes of the dictator. That's fascism. Okay? We are actually practicing a form of fascism here today. The only thing we don't have is the dictator. So instead of a dictator, we have a deep state, a bureaucracy that forms what would be, if you think about it, the dictator, and they use big corporations, big tech. Too big to fail means the state's going to protect you as long as you carry out the wishes of the state. We are living in an American fascist system now. Okay? We are fascists. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the Nazis were National Socialists. They never used the word Nazi. That's an American word. The Nazis didn't call themselves Nazis. Okay? They called themselves National Socialists. They were nationalists and they were socialists. Hitler said to private industry, if you don't do what I say, the state will take you. That's socialism. Do you understand the difference?
Yes.
So when people throw around fascism and Nazi, they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Okay? We are, and Trump understands this, by the way. I've heard him discuss it and I've heard people around it. We are a fascist state already. The Democrats were the leaders of the fascist party.
Yeah.
Okay. The Republicans are the independent party who want to return to the Constitution as a sacred document and return most of the control to the state. You can't have fascism when you have dispersed power. Fascism requires power to be concentrated in the center. The Democrats are the fascist party of America because they want all the power concentrated at the center. The Republicans are the free enterprise party who wants to distribute the power to the states. As a libertarian, I'm just much, much more aggressive than that. Okay, but listen, I support Trump, even though if you read my book, A Radical Reset, which I just happen to have a copy of right here.
Bring over.
You get that?
And yeah.
Anyway, you can pick it up on Amazon. It's the Manifesto of Anti-Politism. You'll see that I'm like way much more aggressive on this distributions. But why do I support Trump? Because I live in the real world, and we're not anti-politics yet. And part of something is always better than all of nothing, right? So it's an easy choice. Trump is the closest thing we have to it now. And if Trump accomplishes changing the trajectory from going like this to just leveling off, just level it off, okay, he will have saved America.
Right on.
And I think we have a chance here to save the Western civilization. And I think Trump is the historic figure who's leading the movement to do it. We all have to pray and help him achieve success, because his success is our success. And if he fails and we go back to the way it used to be and normalcy, like what Democrats call normal, that's fascism. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Let's wrap it up.
I'm a lunatic. What can I say? But listen, guys, I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to wrap it up. Look, those of you who are having a little trepidation about what's going on, because it's all so different. For example, he's putting in Robert Kennedy at HHS. Drug companies their heads are exploding. It's time to bring them to heel, guys. It's time to take away the centralized power of the corporate state being ruled by a single party, the Democrats. It's time to destroy that. Not just change it, destroy it. Trump is the great destroyer of the American fascist state. He's the opposite of what people have been calling him. He's the anti-fascist. All these people going after him are the fascists. So guys, support the president, because baby, he's the only game in town and there's no other choice. Okay, thank you very, very much for joining me today. We're very excited about what's going on here at A Radical Reset. We're going to have some big announcements coming down the road. But until then, enjoy, share this with your friends. Please like, share, do all that stuff that I don't know how to do because I'm an old boomer and what do I know? And thank you for supporting me, by the way, through my illness. Thank you very much. And until next week, this is your Uncle Herbie saying peace out.